Welcome back to the Proximity is Power podcast. We have Hal Rosen in the house. Hal, thanks for coming on, man.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Gage.
So, a quick bio on Hal. He is from New Jersey and currently lives with his wife in Scottsdale, Arizona. He is the former CEO of EnviroShare Solutions, a health and safety compliance company with over 25 years helping companies do that. He also started a nonprofit called Give a Crap, which I'm excited to talk about. And he's huge on contribution, giving, personal growth. Hal and I actually met for the first time in a gondola in Whistler skiing. And we just started chatting, and I just thought Hal was such a cool dude, so I'm excited to chat. So Hal, you're from New Jersey. So what was childhood like for you?
Well, childhood was definitely interesting. If you want to talk about it, traumatic, but it was such a blessing to have those lessons in my life. I wouldn't want to change it one bit. I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and then I moved over to to Jersey when I think I was about 4.5, 5 years old. My parents bought a house in a town called Cherry Hill. And my father was a pretty hard worker. During the week he would fix video games, jukeboxes, and vending machines in bars and diners and arcades and wherever else they put them in those days in the 70s. And at night he was an antique dealer. My mom and him had an antique store in downtown. It was called South Street in Philadelphia. So my dad, while he was doing his vending routes and fixing these games for the different establishments, he had friends that worked at junkyards and thrift stores, and he'd buy all kinds of weird and unusual things from these people. And and on the weekends, it was always that we would go to some flea market or antique extravaganza every Saturday and Sunday. We stay at the Hojo, the Howard Johnson, and then we get up bright and early, probably 3 in the morning, and we go out there and sell my dad's stuff. And I was doing that till I was a huckster. I mean, I was 4 or 5 years old selling antiques, and it was fun. And it was unusual, and all the things that my dad brought home, and not only the things that my dad brought home, but the people that they brought home associated with the junk. So it was, I mean, I used to travel into some bad parts of Philadelphia with my father, where he would buy things from all kinds of places, and I wouldn't say that would be the most um, place that you would bring a child these days. That would be one thing, but it was definitely gave me my ability um, to sell, and I think it actually gave me the gift of gab in some ways too, just being able to talk to so many different people when I was a little kid.
Wow. So, growing up, when you say your childhood was traumatic, just all of that experience, being where kids shouldn't be, mostly.
Yeah, I can tell you, like, I got arrested with my father at 8 years old. He was selling drugs, which I didn't know. What happened was, is I would go into these different neighborhoods all over Philadelphia. My dad would go in and fix a vending machine, but I think along the way he was selling drugs. I don't know the whole story or what was going on, but I remember one time he told me to stay in the car, and he would tell me to hide underneath his coat in the back seat sometimes because the neighborhood was that bad. And at least, he had some concern about me. But, one time I remember that he came out of the place where he was at, and there was two police officers, and he was handcuffed. And I remember them coming to the car. They got me out of the car. They opened the back of the trunk, and there was this huge, huge, huge bag of marijuana. And I was dragged off to the jail with my father. And to this day, I still really have an image of him sitting on a stool in the jail. And at that time, I said that's never going to be me. Like I know who I was going to be in life. I had a bubby, or you would call a grandmother, that would say to me, "You'll be a millionaire by the time you're 30." And That actually really happened.
Wow.
So, I mean, they always told me that I shouldn't be working with my hands. And because my grandfather was a union plumber, my father was a mechanic basically during the day. So they wanted me, I'm a Jewish boy from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. They wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer. I wound up becoming a highly overeducated garbage man, which was probably the best thing I could ever do. But it was fun. There was a lot of problems with money. Primarily the trauma was my mom and my mom and my father had a lot of rage. There was a lot of um, emasculation, I guess, from my mother. Like just I mean, crazy, rageful acts. That's kind of how it was. My father would get home every night and go into the bathroom and get stoned. So it probably wasn't the best, of growing up. But I know that I was loved. Like I really do get that I was loved, and there was a lot of love. But my parents fought a lot, and mostly they fought about money, which my dad wasn't very good at paying the bills, so the sheriff department came a couple times for the tax liens because my dad never paid the taxes. The water got shut off, the electric got shut off, all these different things. And my mom probably had a consumer consumption problem, meaning that she was like retail therapy. And so, that didn't go along with my mom and dad well. So, I mean, there was a couple times where I saw my dad raise his hands to my mom. He threw her into a closet one time. It was really sad. I mean, and at the time and for many years even in my adulthood, I would say that haunted me. But I will tell you, it only made me a better man. And it probably hurt me at first, because it took me a long time to find love in my life, real love. Like I could think that that who I want to be, and who the person's going to be. And so there was a lot of things that I needed to fix about myself. And what was interesting too is, like, towards the end of my high school, my mom got involved in a thing called Landmark Education. And Landmark Education was a seminar series that was by a guy named Warner Earhart. He started a thing called Seminar Training in LA and San Francisco in the early 70s. And they did this, and my mom did it in the early 80s. And I really did see a shift in my mom and dad's relationship. You could see a lot more love. For many years, my dad would sleep in the den, on the floor, not in the bedroom with my mom. They fought, they just didn't mostly it was about money, I think. But, my sister went off to college, and when she did, I saw them. I saw more of a family, and my father, also at 7 years old had a major heart attack, and that was pretty traumatic for me. I remember he came home from the Renegers, selling the antiques on a Sunday. He came home and said he wasn't feeling well, and he immediately he went to the hospital, and they wound up he was having a heart attack. But then and then between 14 and 17, I would say that my mom was in and out of the hospital too. She had a hysterectomy, and that it was just, she had a back operation. She had a lot of things that, always some problems with her health. So yeah, it was devastating. And just, I mean, that would give you I think that would give some kids a little bit of some challenge in their life.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
yeah. And I think I still to this day, I love my parents. I love them dearly, and my mom is still living. She lives, actually, she moved out here in 2006 in Arizona, and she lives about 30 miles from my house with my stepfather. My father, actually, he passed on when I was 20 from another major heart attack. So same thing. He came home from the Renegers and he then went downstairs out of the house to get something out of the car, and he had a major heart attack right in the front of my house. And I found out about this. My uncle sends this is the kind of communication back then. My uncle sends me leaves a message on a answering machine that my father passed on. I hope that can give you a little bit of background of of what I happened.
That probably got you.
So my father passed on when I was 20. I came home and I actually tried to run his. He finally got away from fixing the vending machines, and he just had an antique store. Um, and I came home after he passed on, and I started to run this. And my mom is like, "No son of mine is going to run an antique store. You're going to go to college. You're going to get an education. You're going to do. You're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or something. You'll be an engineer, whatever it is." And so I started to run it, and then within, I don't know, about a month, my mom got a lawyer, and she got me out of there quick. So it was a little hard love from my mom, and I literally went back to Arizona,
Hmm.
and and from there, I went to school. I used to come home every summer, and then from there I would fix video games on the Jersey Shore while I was going to school in Arizona State as a mechanical engineer.
Hmm.
And it wasn't till I was, so when this whole thing happened with my mom and kicked me out of this antique store and all this stuff, I didn't talk to my mom for 4 years. you know? And when I was just about to graduate, my mom said, she called me and says she wants to come to my graduation. And I'm like, you didn't pay for it. You don't deserve it. Well, she came anyway. And, it was a good thing. And our relationship healed. But I was going to school for industrial technology with an emphasis in hazardous materials and waste management. And I got a job working for a company selling this bacteria product that would actually reduce waste in like septic tanks and grease traps. And I would, my job was to go run around town and try to get people to use this product instead of getting these big tanks of waste pumped out every couple of weeks or every couple of months. And the bacteria actually breaks the stuff down into it was a little bit snake oil, but it was definitely it did something. Um, so what happened was is I wound up selling these products on not only in Arizona, but I started to call around the country, and I started to sell this stuff over the to people over the telephone for their companies. And I had one client up in Denver, Colorado. And I was selling them for a while. And I actually took I took about a month and a half off the summer I graduated and went to Europe. So I went all over, I did the Europe thing and with two of my buddies. And when I came back, the company in Denver said, "Hey, why don't I come? Why don't you come up here and help me sell for the week?" And I come up there. They offer me this job. And I come back. I accept the job, and I go from sunny Arizona at 80 degrees on November 15th to Denver, Colorado, and it's a sunshine daydream with snow on the ground. I wound up working for this guy. I mean, it was kind of a kindred spirit. He was an older guy. He was about my age when he hired me. He was about 55 or so. I'm 55 right now. And it was a Jewish guy from New York. He was kind of a hippie, and was a really great dude. And we had a lot in common. I actually lived with him and his girlfriend, and his place near downtown Denver. And within 9 months, I was fired 3 times. So on the first time that I got fired, I said, I had a company car at the time, which I wasn't allowed to drive to where I was going, but I drove out to Arches National Park, and I was eating a can of ravioli. I was pretty broke, and I called my mom up, and I say, Mom, we just started to have cell phones back then. And I call my mom and say, Mom, sign me up for the Landmark Forum. So I wound up doing it. Everybody in my family would do some type of self development. And I wound up doing it. And I wound up getting this distinction. The distinction is, it's like, but I was sitting on the sidelines all the time in life. I wasn't making a seat at the table per se, if you can understand that. And I wound up, after I got fired, I figured, you know what, maybe I should ask for my job back. I could make it better. Well, I asked for my job back, and I wound up getting the job back. And then a couple weeks later, the same crap happened, and I got fired. And I wound up, it was in '95. It was August 8th, and Jerry Garcia dies on August 9th of 1995. And I'm like, shit, I'm going to go back to Arizona. I bought a VW bus, and I had a fish named Moses, and we packed up my place and went back to Arizona, go to grad school. The one casualty of the drive was my fish Moses died at the Four Corners. Got too hot in the van, and the water, I think, fried him. But sad stuff. But all in all, it got me in action. And when I got back to Arizona, I lived in my buddy's driveway for 2 weeks, and in the camper van. And I just I went to school. I found a job. I actually started to try to be a waiter for 2 days. Realized that wasn't in my cards. And I had a buddy that I went to undergrad school with, which he got a job with a consulting company called GZA Consulting. They had a satellite office in Phoenix, and they hired me. And within 3 years, finally got bought out. It's actually the largest engineering company in the world, called Foster Wheelers. So it was amazing. I got to travel all over the country. I got travel basically a lot of places in the world. I got South America, Central America, Canada, basically I think I was in 48 states, 50 states. I mean, I probably made every state. They paid for my grad school. And you see me now as a long-haired hippie then, and I'm still a long-haired hippie. But I had a boss, and he didn't like, I had a couple good clients. And I didn't really have any kind of accountability, because as long as I made money for the company, they didn't really bother me. The new sheriff came in town. He was a military guy. Didn't like the long hair. Didn't like my Birkenstocks and overalls, where everybody else was wearing shirts and ties. And basically, I got myself in a little bit of trouble, and I was put on a leave of absence. And during the day, I played golf, and at night, I wrote my thesis. And then about 3-4 months later, I graduated from graduate school, and then I wound up landing a job with a company out of Oklahoma. And they taught me how to sell the services that I actually knew how to engineer now. And from there, 13 months later, I go in for a sales call with the owner. We thought we were going to land the account. It was a great deal. And at the end of the meeting, we walk out, and he said, "You were like an ape in there. You were like a baboon." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "We did a great job there." He just criticized my salesmanship. And I said, "I'm not going to work for this dude." Of April 1st of 2001 is when I officially started EnviroShare Solutions. And I started out of my house, it was a two-bedroom condo. And that was really the trajectory of my company. I went from having one employee to having three, to having seven, having 10, having 20, having 25. And then, as we grew, we got different offices, got different clients. We started to go to different states. We went to different types of industries. We helped out in all areas where you would need environmental and safety compliance. That would be in like distribution centers and manufacturing and service centers and hospitality, scrap yards, salvage yards, paint manufacturers, milk manufacturers, water manufacturers, trucking companies, unit train facilities, everything that you could imagine.
So your company basically would help these companies just make sure that they're good with the guidelines and the rules and the laws.
Correct. And when I started this company, when I got in 95, and even in 2001, the rules and regulations were there,
Mm-hmm.
but the implementation of them weren't really being forced. You know, the EPA and the OSHA would say, hey, up to $25,000 a day per occurrence, but that didn't really happen. And as you know, as environmental sustainability and safety compliance and environmental compliance and not in my backyard started to get bigger and bigger. You know, I got lucky. You know, and yeah, the company grew beyond what I ever thought was imaginable. I was blessed from I always thought it was my father up there helping me or my grandparents, you know, helping me. But yeah, it's been a great ride. I had some ups and downs in the company as the company grew. Um, I still had all that trauma. You know, I didn't like. I participated in Landmark, and I like kind of got out of my head about certain things, but the trauma stuff still was there. And you know, after a while, I had a lot of fear about money because I lived in, you know, I grew up in scarcity, and you know, when you get a whole bunch of money, it's never enough. You know, like at least at that time in my life, like I always thought I needed more. Yeah, I had to, you know, I had to numb myself, and I numbed myself with drugs and alcohol, and women and stuff, and just travel and noise from everything outside of myself.
Hmm.
It gives you a little example.
No, that makes sense. So, what originally inspired you to start EnviroShare? Was it just you didn't want to work for somebody else, pretty much?
No, so I didn't talk about this. My mom's always told me, you know, you're never going to work with your hands like your grandfather or your father. So my grandfather was a union plumber all his life. And when I was about 28 years old, I think it was, I get a call, and it was my grandfather, and he told me he had cancer, and it was terminal cancer. So if you go back when I was 9 years old, my grandfather had the same cancer in his kidneys. So at 57 years old, he had to retire. And what happened was is because he was a union plumber, he was in this on all the demolition and repiping and whatever he did, he was exposed to lead and he was exposed to asbestos. So he got cancer in the kidney. They took one of his kidneys, but at 79 years old, he was diagnosed with cancer, and at 80 years old, he passed on. And that was right when I started EnviroShare, and that's kind of like why I got into it. And what's interesting is not only did my grandfather pass on from cancer and from asbestosis, but my grandmother, she got the same cancer 18 months later.
Wow.
You would think it would be brokenhearted, but I don't think they liked each other.
Hmm.
No.
So you started your company to keep people safe and healthy, pretty much.
I think my tagline is to keep the birds and the bunnies protected for your children's children. You know, that was really our tagline for the company.
Hmm.
We wanted to make sure that everybody came home safe for their family.
What were some of the challenges you faced, like growing that company?
If you want to talk about challenges, it's, you know, is how to grow a company, how to get good staff, how to you know, have cash flow, how to maintain um, you know, good employees, how do you keep a good reputation about your company, how do you scale. You know, there's so many different things that came our way, and um, I just kept on, you know, working at it. You know, like I guess Tony talks about the 2 millimeter shifts. You know, I think I was doing that. Um, without knowing with that information ahead of me. I know you're about, what are you? You're 28 or 27 or something.
26.
26. Okay, so like, I like give you a lot of courage, a lot of acknowledgement for doing what you have. A lot of courage to be where you are today, because yeah, it's like it was. I had no information. I just grew up trying to be a huckster, and I just kept on selling and selling and selling. And when the jobs came in, I just I allowed the people that were smarter. Like Tony talks about leverage. I was using leverage. I didn't even know it. I was just like, I can't do this. I'd walk into some places and they tell these guys give me these jobs, and I walk out with my right hand guy, and we look at each other, how we're going to get it done, and we made it work. I think Tony even talks about this. He talks about living in the uncertainty. The more uncertainty that you can handle or actually experience, the more fulfilled your life will be. And you know what? It opened up so many doors, because you have to be vulnerable and you got to be able to ask other people to help you along the path.
Hmm. I like that. What advice would you give someone that is an aspiring entrepreneur or business owner?
I just got back this thing called Spire. And I heard these guys. I heard David Goggins speak, and Jesse Itzler, and Marcus Lemay, I think his name was, and a whole bunch of other people, right?
Yeah.
And I think what the common thread that I heard from these guys is tenacity. To not quit, to never give up, right? And that's the one thing. It's like when you like what Goggins' whole thing is like 40%. When you say when you want to quit, you're only really at 40% of your capabilities of where you need to be, and it's so true. You know, I mean, I feel blessed that I was given that. Like I just now I knew I was single-minded focused to get whatever needed to get done, and I would do whatever I needed to do it. These participation awards that people get these days, and they don't have disappointment in their life, and no one wants to tell them bad news. Start to feel that now. Lean into that, right? Because if you can lean into that and handle that, and you don't have to numb yourself like I did for so many years, your life can look amazing. I'm lucky I got sober when I stopped drinking at 2016, and really got clean and sober in 2018. So, and that was a gift. But for 25 years of my life, I was pretty heavy in the drinking, and not, I wouldn't say real hard drugs, but I will say that I was doing things that I shouldn't be doing, and I was mostly to calm my psyche down, like the anxiety and the fear. And when you can actually be able to overcome that fear, get over that, whatever that is, that false evidence appearing real, your life can be a sunshine daydream. For me, I look at it. We are such miracles, right? I mean, we're born in such a beautiful country, right? We won the game by being just here in the United States. So get out there and bust the move. Don't sit on your laurels and think things are going to come to you. I mean, I think you got to bust your butt for a period of time, and then you can actually see what comes to you and get into the flow. The nursery rhyme, row row your boat gently down the stream. There's probably like a lot of people going upstream all the time, right? And like merrily, life will be a dream, right? Like, but you have to go down the stream instead of up. And sometimes I think we push too hard. And I think when you're starting, you gotta push. I know what you do. Those sales guys got to get out there and knock, right? We got to dial and smile when we get on the phone, right? Those are the things. And the more knocks you make, the more the probability of you being successful is going to go up. Because what happens is you're seeing more people, but when you're seeing more people, you're also getting better at what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
More reps.
for me, I mean, I'll be honest. This is my first podcast, so it's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm saying too much or too little, but I know I'm going to get better because I'm getting on base here. And that's the most important thing is like, we know Babe Ruth for hitting home runs, right? But what else do you know Babe Ruth for?
Most strikeouts.
Right. So, like, I mean, that's the most important thing that I think people need to know. And he holds the record. I don't even think it's ever been broken.
Hmm.
So, yeah, like tenacity. But, you got to start getting real and starting to be present in the moment.
Yeah.
I think my number one thing for men and for children is to really know how much of a miracle they really are. Like just being born and how lucky they were to be, that one, Tony talks about that one lucky sperm is you, you know, but it's more than that. And, we're just so blessed to be alive.
Hmm. That's beautiful. What mistakes do you see leaders or young entrepreneurs make most often?
They don't schedule enough time for themselves, meaning, the thinking time, and going deep in the thinking time. They put too much on their plate. And I think younger generation these days, I think, wants some more balance in their life. And I think, like I said, you got to work really, really, really hard, but you got to know when to take a break. You got to take care. You make sure you take care of your health, because that's what I didn't do.
Hmm. Yeah, keep what's most important forefront.
The other thing too is who you surround yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
Like who's lifting you up. Like, are you the most successful one in your group, or are you like hanging around other people that could actually pull you forward? And it's important that we really take that extremely seriously,
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to be what sets you apart from others, I think.
I agree. I mean, you talked about personal development, Tony Robbins, and I'm not familiar with Landmark. Is that just another seminar personal
Um,
development company?
well, it's kind of interesting because I heard that Tony Robbins actually did Landmark in the
Hmm.
in the 80s or 70s or something.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's similar. Landmark was a more heady kind of thing. It was more mental, whereas I feel that with Tony, and I mean I did Landmark for 20 some years on and off, and when I jumped into Tony in 2021, I mean I'll be honest, my life miraculously changed, because what Tony does is it's more head and heart. I live in my heart each and every day of my life. For those 20 some years that I owned that company and was an engineer, quote, I lived in my head. And I've learned how to be in my heart more in Tony's world than I've ever been able to learn. I mean, I think it was innately inside of me the whole time,
Uh-huh.
but I don't know if he really has helped me um, uh, amplify it where other people can hear. Like my whole mantra this whole year and last year was to love more, to laugh more, to live more, give more, and serve more. And I mean it. Like that's like, if I'm gonna do anything, I gotta check one of those boxes, because if it ain't gonna check those boxes,
Hmm.
I'm gonna probably say no to it now.
Hmm. What does it mean to you to live in your heart rather than your head? And for someone that hasn't maybe been to a Tony Robbins seminar.
Hmm. Well, how does it feel? For me, after I sold my company, I like went on this spiritual journey, like I like had to heal myself. Like as I said, I got sober. I went ahead and got, I like was on all these prescription pills from the doctors that I didn't, every single thing you needed to focus, to calm you down, to sleep, and plus alcohol and weed. Like I was living the rock star lifestyle. I had Adderall in the morning, Xanax in the late morning. I had some beers, I had whatever else, and that night I put myself to sleep with a bottle of wine and some Ambien. Um, so I had to shut my head off. That's really what, like they had me on all these drugs. So when I finally like broke free and sold the company, I got clean, and I lived on some ashrams in India and Greece, and um, went all around the world trying to, seeking something. And, what I found out, it's an internal job. It's all within us.
Hmm.
And it's fascinating when you actually start to feel again, and when you start to breathe, and when you slow yourself down enough so you can see the clouds move, or you can see the branches and the leaves the leaves on the branches move. It's like, I mean, I remember, like, I was in an ashram in India, and I was in this program called Born Again, where you go into a room and you play like a kid for 2 hours, and then you sit for an hour and meditate. And I remember coming out like maybe the third day, and I've been living in the ashram maybe 15, 20 days. And like, I didn't notice the outside, how much the beauty of the ashram was. And there was a lake in the middle. And I remember seeing this turtle on this rock. And it was just so colorful. And like every day after that, I got to see that turtle on that rock all the time because it got me present. So when you're present, I think that's when you start to be in your heart. You get to feel yourself.
Hmm.
You, instead of numbing yourself with, our minds can spin and spin and spin. Whereas if when you start to get into your heart, you get to start to feel things. You don't think about it anymore. You get to feel it. And you can feel me coming through me, through here, probably.
Yeah.
Like it's funny. I stood up in that Inspire um, seminar yesterday. That guy, Marcus, whoever it was, the prophet dude.
Elements.
And he had this exercise about climbing like on a mountain, and where are you on the mountain? And everybody, mostly people on there, put themselves on top of the mountain. He's like, does anybody put themselves on the bottom of the mountain? And I said, yeah, I raised my hand and I stood up. He's like, why do you do that? It's because I want to help everybody. And that's about, I think, being in your heart, like seeing you, Gage, right? Like when I met you and you're telling me like you're this podcaster and you got this selling, helping, like people sell and stuff like that. I'm like, wow, like what can I learn from this dude? I've learned so much from you in this last couple months knowing you. Then I may, hopefully you learn something from me. But I mean, it's fascinating when we can learn from each other. And I think you even said something like that to me. Is we all, we're all mushrooms and trees in the forest, right? Sometimes we're little guys and sometimes we're jolly green giants, right?
Hmm.
But the trees need the mushrooms to grow, right? And the mushrooms need the trees to shade them so they cannot get, they don't dry out. So we're all here to help each other. And I think that that's God's will for us. That's the most important thing, is when we help others, like that's the most important thing in the world. And that's really what I told the guy. I said, look, I'm just here to be a better version of myself. And, I'm here to like create a compelling future. So where if I can be more, do more, give more, then I can help more people fulfill on their enjoyment
I love
and
that.
their desires.
And I agree 100%. I love what you said. Like, helping others is a great way to get in your heart, and then also just be present in the moment. I think so many people, are always future oriented, especially entrepreneurs, like never satisfied, right? Enough's never enough. And yeah, even that's a great reminder for me to stay present, stay in my heart. You've invested a ton of money into your personal development. How have you seen the return? And like, I mean, you said your life's transformed since Tony Robbins in 2021.
Yeah, so I can give you a little bit. In March of 21, I had my wife, when I was in Guatemala, she signed up for Tony Robbins. She did the first one that he had online in the new studio. And she's like, you got to do this. She signed me up. And, 3 weeks later, after I did UPW, I got engaged. I was 52 years old. And then I wound up, we actually had a huge fight. We got married. We had 1 year of marriage, and we had a big fight with my stepdaughter. And or I just it was just a bad situation. And my wife actually moved out of the house for 3 months. And you know what? In that time, I was really grateful that I did Tony Robbins. It was the things that I learned for those 2 years that I was taking the Master University.
Hmm.
It was incredible. I actually said this once to Tony. I said, I just wake up in the morning, I do I ask God, what's the next right thing? And I live in my heart. And he looked at me and said, faith without works doesn't work. And it changed my life. You got to get into action. You can't have this compelling future if you don't take action. And that's what I think I've learned in this. Yeah, it's been an expensive ride for sure. But there's a lot of other things that I could have done with that money. Maybe I could have bought another car or bought another house or whatever it was that I could have done with that money. But the most important thing is to invest in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We got one life to live, and life is so precious. When you start to surround yourself with people that you love and that elevate you is one thing. But when you're around those people and you actually start to look at what miracles surround you in this present moment now, everything becomes a blessing.
Hmm.
And to me, that lesson right there in my life is worth whatever money I have to pay for whatever it was to get where I am. So in those, since my wife moved back in, my relationship has gotten better, way much better. We're able to relate much better. I've gone through some portals in my life, right? Some transformational portals, but I will say that my finances, I'm getting smarter with my finances. I see now that I don't have to work. I'm retired. I retired at 48 years old. But now I see that my wealth is increasing, not by going like this, but going like this, just moving my finger and actually talking to smarter people, embracing some of the conversations, taking some risks. And there's been some mistakes too, but I'm learning from those mistakes. And every day I'm trying, I wouldn't even say trying, I am getting wiser each and every day because of the people that I talk to, the conversations I have, and the events I go to, and the awareness, the presence of just how great my life really is. And today's the best day ever because I got out of bed, I went for a hike, I worked out, I took a ride, I took my dog for a little bit of a walk. She got to run around Home Depot. I mean, all these things are blessings. It's such a good thing. And hear my wife happy and just enjoy. And I had a sad thing happen this past month. My father-in-law passed on, and he was a great man, really great man, Poppy. And I think even participating in Tony with that and having the friends that we had associated with that, but also the mindset, like you could either sit and cry, or you could find the grace and the blessing and the gift that he was in our life. And I think that was learned in the seminars. And I think that was learned in the people that we hang around with and talk to. Yeah, I created this thing last year called Forever Plat. I've created a pretty big, compelling future for myself. It could be an expensive proposition, but you know what? I'm fortunate that it's going to happen because I know how much this has changed my life and how much happier I've been and how much more content and how much more peace I have. And I'm able to love more. I'm able to laugh more. I'm able to live more. I'm able to give more, and I'm able to serve more. And that's, I think it's worth the price. I wouldn't ask for a refund.
Last couple questions. What are some things you wish you would have known before you started your journey?
To have faith. I found God or found Jesus when I was 53 years old. Like when my grandmother told me, you'll be a millionaire by the time you're 30, I put money as my God.
Hmm.
That was what pulled me, that was the only thing that driving me forward. And when you do that, it's not very fulfilling because you always want more of that, right? But what's interesting about faith is that you can get as much as you want. I think I want to live my life as a sole billionaire, as I acquire my wealth increases, great, but I think being connected to God and to Jesus and having faith is, I think that was probably the one thing that was missing. And I think also patience, patience for myself, patience for others, and patience for the world.
I love that. I want you to share too. You had a sweet car collection, and tell us the math. What would have happened if you would have invested that money instead of
Yeah.
buying all the
So
cars?
yes. So every year that I owned this company, I would buy a classic car, and my mother, she threw away my Matchbox cars when I was a kid. So I decided when I owned this company that I was going to buy every single one that she threw away, but not as the Matchbox cars, but as real cars. So in 2003, I was at a car auction in downtown Scottsdale. It was I think a Saturday night or a Friday night. I wound up buying a 1970 Challenger convertible, 446 packs, plum crazy, um, pistol grip. It was a beautiful car, just unbelievable fast car, beautiful, just muscle, just pure enjoyment and a masculine power, right? And I like had that car, and then every year and every couple months or every couple weeks, I started to buy more and more. And as I built my collection, um, I didn't really use that Challenger. It was $68,000, and that was like most of the cars I was buying were anywhere between 10,000 to 40,000. There was a couple car I bought a 1959 Impala convertible that was 78,000. I actually at one time really drunk at an auction in Monterey. I bought a Frank Sinatra's, Nancy Sinatra's Rolls Royce. We bought it for $75,000. That was one of the things that made me go sober because I woke up with the bill or the auction ticket the next morning and didn't even realize what I did. So yeah, like yeah. So by the time I retired in 2018, I had 35 cars, and I probably spent well over $1 million in cars. And it was fun. I wouldn't say that I lost money, but I wouldn't say I made money. And when I was in the finance seminar or program this past in Whistler, I got some good medicine, and it was strong medicine. It made me wake up. Like I told Tony, like the first time I did finance, I just went in there. I'm just going to have a good time. I want to meet some people. I have enough money. I don't really need anything else. Well, the funny thing is that in the seminar, I started thinking about it. Well, I bought that car for $68,000, sold the car in 2023 in January for $68,000. So I didn't make any money. I didn't lose any money. But then I'm like, oh, let me just see this. Like if I would have put $68,000 in 2003 into Apple, and what would it be worth in 2023? Well, it was a little bit eye opening. So I mean, how much do you think it was? Do you know what?
I have no idea.
Right. So it was It's shocking. So I didn't realize what it was, but it was $9.2 million.
Oh my gosh, just that one car.
Just that one car. But not only that, that was just the value of the stock. If I would have actually, and in 2011, they started to give dividends.
Uh-huh.
So at that time, if I would have got the dividends too, it would have made it to $13.4 million. That was just one car. So it was a huge lesson. And, I think when it comes to investing, I would say it was better to invest yesterday, but the time to invest next is now.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm learning. It's like I'm learning how to make sure that I take care of what I have, and I don't need to make top money, but I want to make sure that I have my net worth in things that will have legs for the future.
Hmm.
And those things that don't really that doesn't have much cash flow, I'm gonna reinvest those things, sell those things, and reinvest the money into things that have a little bit better legs.
Hmm.
So it was a good lesson, a great lesson to learn.
Um, 3, 2, 1 pivot. What are 3 books, 2 people, and 1 quote that have impacted you the most, and why?
So 3 books. So The Untethered Soul, I think, is a great book. The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, Dan McMillan, and then I think the E Myth Revisited.
It's a good business book. I like that
Yeah.
one.
So two people to follow.
Yeah, 2 people that have impacted you the most.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I will tell you who they are: Jerry Garcia, and then Tony Robbins.
Why Jerry Garcia?
Um, the words in his songs are have given me wisdom for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
But the funny thing is, I would say this, that I'm a deadhead, but I also would tell you to be a Buffett head these days. Listen to a lot of what Warren Buffett has to say, because there's so much he can say too. So yeah, I mean, and Tony, he has a way. He got me out of my head and got me into my heart, and I'm really living these days. Like, I feel the cold, I feel the heat. I mean, I like, I'm present. I'm here with you. I'm like, want to make a difference. I want to share myself. I want to be vulnerable, and I want to be real.
1 quote that has impacted you the most, and why?
Yeah, there's a Williams James. A man must be able to change his own fabric of his own thought. I was in one of these seminars. I was in Bermuda, actually, and I was at a course called Being a Leader, and they had that up on the screen, and it really made a difference for me because I realized that I had some really not so great thoughts,
Hmm.
and I needed to change those thoughts. And that's what made that whole shift for me, going from getting sober and changing my whole life up.
Hmm. That's cool. You can only change your life if you change your thoughts, right?
Yeah, and a man must be able to change the fabric of his own thoughts. Is really important. Like, you got to do it yourself. I mean, Goggins talks about. I mean, there's so many people. Like, Tony talks about mindset. Everybody talks about mindset. You got to callous that shit. Excuse my language. That was David Goggins.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah,
Last question, Hal. If you had the world's attention for 1 minute, what would you want them to know?
yeah. I mean, what miracles surround you in this present moment now? I mean, like, just to have gratitude that they're alive, and how much they're a miracle.
Hmm. Beautiful. Where can people find you, Hal?
They can find me at lessonsfromabove.com.
Heck yeah. Are you on Instagram too, or no?
So you can find me at Be Green Buddha.
Be Green Buddha. I love
Yeah.
it. Well, Hal, thanks so much for coming on, and thanks everyone for listening. And until next time, peace.